Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Thank you so much for joining us at the Flower Lounge and for coming here to the Sun Center in Phoenix.
You're welcome.
So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So for the listeners who don't already have the benefit of knowing you, do you want to talk about a little bit about where you come from, your background, and what's led you to this moment?
I'll make it short. I'm a country girl by nature and live here in Phoenix. I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. Been here for about 20 years now. And the path that I was led to naturopathic medicine was something I could have never planned. I never knew about naturopathic medicine. And I was actually started my career with management science and computer systems. I like to put puzzles together. I'm very curious. And so did a lot of international work and consulting, and eventually was literally led by divine spirit to go into this type of medicine. And it's been beautiful because I can weave together the understanding of different connecting points and the dots that go on that may seem abstract to others, but yet there's a way to bring all of those together. So I founded and CEO of Soello Health, and we've been doing virtual healthcare education and consulting before it was popular. And then I also see clients in person here in Phoenix.
So as a naturopathic doctor, how are you experiencing or feeling about all of the different phenomena that are occurring over the last few months? What things are on your mind?
Good question. The top of mind for me is what I see is similar to what I see whenever I'm working with a client who's newly diagnosed with cancer. Okay. And this is feedback that I've gotten from my clients. I'm thinking of one woman in particular, and she said that when she was first diagnosed with cancer, she went through this routine of whatever she was supposed to do. And she said, I woke up 1 year later and I look back and I'm not sure who that person was. And so the way that I'm looking at this is there's a fear level that is occurring for a variety of reasons. And so whenever I see fear, whether it be with my patients or within myself, if I can be mindful of that fear, then I like to step out of it. Because when I step out of it, then I have perspective of more of the totality of what's happening.
Yeah, so let's just take this a little deeper. You have a patient, they come in and say, I've been diagnosed with cancer. I've come to you for a second opinion, or how can you help me naturally? How do you help them peel back that fear layer so they can go into the process of healing and feeling more empowered, awakened, self-discovery versus doomsday, death, panic, what's the end, fear?
So a very important thing first is it's a diagnosis. It is not who you are. It is not who you are. And that's even with Soello, if you take a look at the definition of Soello is not about going out to achieve health. It's not about going external to get something, to get health, to do whatever. Soello is about going inside, because when you go inside, then you have eliminated the distractions. And there's so many distractions when you have a diagnosis. There's so many distractions now anyway. And so when you go inside and you sit in the center of yourself in that silence, it can be uncomfortable, but in that silence comes your answers. And so whenever I'm working with a client that's been diagnosed with cancer, that fear obviously comes up and we talk about it. And I remind them, this is a blip on the screen and it's not you. Because you are this incredible human being with this magnificent heart and all these wonderful attributes. This is a diagnosis. Now, if you want to become your diagnosis, then you identify your diagnosis with you. But I don't work with my clients like that. But we talk about this. And so when we do that, it's like, that's why partnership and collaboration is so important, because I carry the medical knowledge of what that diagnosis is. I am the scout that's looking out way down the road to say, all right, this is what could happen. I'm also the investigator to saying, where have you been? And how have where you've been with your genomics and other factors led you to where you are now? I mean, to me, it's like reading a history book. All right. If you read history, you can understand and connect the dots of what's gone on in the past, and then it helps you understand what's going on now. It's the same way in medicine. So understanding where you've been, understanding where you are, and then mapping out a plan of where you can be. And to me, that's a very important first step, is disengaging from the identification of a diagnosis.
Yes, it feels very out there, like the dualistic other, right? Like the enemy coming to attack my body. When you were talking, I was thinking of something that one of my teachers said to me, and he said, when you turn 45, your body starts to show you signs of everything you've done in those first 45 years. So, whether you haven't been eating right or exercising right or exposed to toxins or thinking toxic thoughts, being around toxic people, environments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever choices we've made in those first 45 years, it's like right around 45 that things start to manifest in our body. And when I think of it in those terms of like, oh, I've created the causes and conditions for whatever is arising versus, and I'm empowered to pivot if I want to and change some things. It feels like so much more to work with than there is this enemy that is taking over my body and I have no control. Right?
Mm-hmm. So that's a little challenging to maneuver through, and because this is a feedback that I'm thinking of one particular individual client or patient, and she's like, I didn't cause my cancer. And so there's a level of emotional attachment that it takes layers to really work through this. And it's like, why does cancer, we're talking about cancer, but any other type of health condition, right? Is why do we just automatically put it in a negative context? Like, wow, what if cancer
is a blessing,
is actually a messenger to say, hey, I mean, if I could be a superpower of any sort, I would want to help people see how incredible their bodies are. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is so amazing and humbling to understand the physiology and the biochemistry. I mean, our bodies want to survive. They want to protect us, and they do everything they can. Our bodies do everything they can in order to help us experience this earth and this dimension. It's amazing.
And to your point, I think personally in my life, anytime I've had a major health condition, it's been a pivot moment in my life, like a transformative, something is happening or it's waking me up to something. And I love what you said about cancer or a chronic condition not being so negative. Granted, it's not fun to suffer. It's not fun to not feel good. It's not fun to discover something's happening in your body you don't understand. And I can totally relate to that from personal experience. And that being said, at least in my life, anytime I've had something major, it's been because something is radically changing inside of me, or that particular imbalance leads me to shift the way that I'm doing something, which, like, how cool is that? The body can be such a messenger, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, to that point, similar to the plant life, it is amazing to me that you can take a plant from a healthy environment. Mm-hmm. You can transplant that plant in an unhealthy stress environment. And that plant will genetically modify the genetic plasticity, and they modify themselves in order to adapt to that type of environment. And to keep alive, right? And even by doing that, then they're helping other plants. It's just amazing. It's our bodies are doing the same thing. I mean, it's similar to when like we have this DNA and we think that we're superhumans and that we've been here so long, but in reality, we haven't been on the earth that long, right? And so whenever we take a look at the number of genes that a human has, as compared to the number of genes a flea has, the flea has more genes than we do. And so we have this junk DNA. And what is junk DNA? Is it really, I mean, our human bodies, were we really created to have junk? I don't really think so, but it's our way of having possible extra DNA and other ways that our body can adapt to incredible stressors that go on in the world.
Let's talk more about that. Tell me more about adaptation. Like, for example, to bacteria, viruses, pathogens, heavy metals, solar flares, strange cosmology. I mean, you name it, right? Tell me about adaptation.
Yeah, the human body is incredibly resilient. And it makes me wonder. I was watching my nephews recently and they're scrubbing their hands because they don't want to get dirty. And I'm like, oh, you already have bacteria and fungi and viruses and parasites. Oh, no, we don't. I'm like, yes, you do. But this is the perspective. Our bodies, our ecosystem, is mirrored in nature, the ecosystem of the plant kingdom. Our bodies, similar to the plant kingdom, we have, quadrillions of bacteria. We have hundreds of thousands of different types of parasites. We have so many viruses. I mean, we have more viruses. I don't know what the last count was, but we have more viruses on this planet than there are stars within the universe. Not the galaxy, but within the universe. Think about that. And so if we have so many of these types of things, you could say, why am I still living?
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, maybe as a human being, because some tend to think that we are like the center of the universe. Maybe we are just a part of the entire system. And that because when we elevate and look above, the planet and the earth and what's going on, and maybe a human being is simply another instrument that is being used by the cosmos in order to provide a level of balance that's needed in this ecosystem.
100%. I'm thinking about last weekend being in Sedona and walking through the creek and looking at the cliff sides and listening to the variety of birds and discovering wild orchids and looking at the little fish in the stream. And there's such a sensation of, like, a reminder of, oh, I'm just a tiny, tiny little part of this whole big picture, this whole big timeless machine that it's not a machine, but like you say, ecosystem that's been going on for billions of years. You scroll on social media and you feel like humans rule the world and all of our opinions and perspectives and the way we feel about things is so dramatic. But being out there is like, oh, I am nature. Like I am a part of this huge whole picture. I think that perspective sometimes gets lost when we're living in the city and busy and so many things going on. How do you see the human body as an ecosystem that can be tweaked or adapted or adjusted, especially in terms of illness or wellness? Where do you draw the parallels between human and plants?
Oh boy, there's so many overlaps. It's very interesting that, or to me it is, that semi-parasitic plants can cohabitate with their host. And I'm thinking of mistletoe, for example. So you have a semi-parasitic plant, and the human mind might say that's evil. Let's cut it out of the tree. And when you cut it out of the tree dies. So there's a symbiotic relationship. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm looking at in medicine. when a person has a growth or a tumor. It's like, well, is there a symbiotic relationship with the person with this? Can they cohabitate?
What a great question.
Hmm.
It's like the mammogram that squishes your breast and then suddenly the cancer spreads everywhere. What if you just left it alone? So your question of, can you cohabitate? Maybe
Yes.
that's there for a reason.
Exactly.
Maybe the body knows exactly what it's doing.
Maybe.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's interesting to watch how we fight. We fight cancer. We fight a disease. We're fighters. And that's very harsh for me. I understand it intellectually, but it's harsh. And it's like, why does it have to be harsh? I'm not saying uncomfortable, but why does it have to be harsh? Because when it's harsh, then we are making judgments and we get caught up in a procedure or a process and we lose perspective. And we disengage from our natural source, which is ourselves. And I recently had, I'm thinking of an individual, first time I spoke with her, and I said, I would like you to do 1, maybe 3 minutes a day of just breathing. Just be mindful of your breath. And it's amazing. It's difficult for some people. But the adaptation of the body is, take a look at the adaptation of plants. Like one of my favorites has to do with the spruce trees. And so there's a spruce bug. I don't know that much about it. It's just some type of worm. It's coming into the forest of the spruce trees. And the trees can emit a certain chemical that wards those off, but yet there's some trees that don't. And so those trees then get eaten by this worm. Now, it's fascinating to say, oh, those are the weak trees in the forest, but in reality, those are the strong trees because they have the same capability to produce the chemical as the others, but they don't. The reason why they don't is because they know that whenever the invader, the worm, comes in, it's injecting, almost like, it's kind of like antibiotics. It's injecting into that tree. And what they're doing is they're wanting to save the other trees so those other trees don't have to do genetic remodification and stuff, and therefore become resistant to that worm.
The tree that's being eaten by the worms, or all the trees become resistant based on that?
If the trees were not eaten and the worms would infect the other trees, and then just like with the human body, got it?
Okay, so it's like putting all your junk in a closet versus all over your house. So storing something in a tumor in your breast versus all over your body.
Yeah.
So the ecosystem sort of compiles it all into a couple of trees.
Yes.
Okay. It's interesting to think of it as by choice too, right? It's harder to draw the parallels when you think about worms. Worms feel very physical. But I think, if it's some sort of chronic condition in my own body, perhaps my own body created it. But versus like, this is happening to me.
Well, and that when there's some type of a chronic illness or a diagnosis for a person, it's easy to go into, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And this is where I think it's important to have compassion and forgiveness of self. Is to say, it's going to be okay. Let's take a look at this. And the way that I like to work with clients is, it's not just a one and done. I work with clients many, many, many months, and we meet multiple times a month with various practitioners. The reason being is it's important to me that the client understands how and why they've gotten to where they are and what are the solutions to get them to move forward. And there's a lot of unbinding, not just on a biochemical level, but also on that emotional and, frankly, a spiritual level. And there is no place in a conversation that I'm scared to go because there's no playbook. There's no playbook. I mean, it's so individualized and it's so unique. And that's why it can't be done in a very short amount of time because it takes time to understand that individual. And it takes time for that individual to even understand themselves.
So what do you think are some of the spiritual, energetic ramifications or reasonings or musings around all the viral activity that's up for conversation in the last few months or in the sphere of dialogue? I mean, I think, is it 99.8% recovery rate? Is that what it is?
The numbers are changing so often.
They're all over.
Let me give some perspective from a different number.
Please.
And these numbers could have changed. But let's take a look at cardiovascular health.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have approximately 7 to 8 billion people in the world, and we take a look at, again, I'm thinking of numbers from Johns Hopkins, what their numbers were with a number of people that were infected versus the number of people who have passed. And if we look at those numbers and compare them with the number of people that have passed on from cardiovascular, like I think the numbers are somewhere around, again, depending on the source, so anywhere from 46 to 47,000 people a day, die with cardiovascular complications. So with just that one number, compared to the number of people that have passed on with this virus, it's a very wide gap. So, it's just an interesting time to see such a wide gap. And it makes me wonder why do we still sell sugar? When you're the obesity, and I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me right now. So I find that when I'm confused, I step back, I get quiet, I take a look at as many things as I can. And, I go back to some of my history and I take a look at history. What has history shown? Where, it's just like with a patient.
Have you had any patients become very ill?
No.
None.
In fact, I've had people say, Dr. C, I'm not scared because by working with you and your team, I feel stronger now than ever. So
that's great.
Yeah.
What are the majority of, when you see patients, for example, what are they coming to you with for?
Oh, golly. They almost always come, obviously, because they're referred and because they don't like the information that they've received and they believe it can be different, but they don't know how. And that's usually why. And so some cases are real complicated, some are not, but they're definitely looking for a connection. They want to learn, they want to understand. And yeah, that's why I would say they come.
So it's like they may get a diagnosis of something and there's something that like either doesn't sit right, or they have something that they feel like there's more to the story, or they want someone on their team that's going to support them in where they want to go versus prognosis or.
Right. So they want to be heard. They want to understand. They want someone that is going to go with them so they feel safe. And I mean, those are fundamentals. And I'm thinking of an individual recently that she's like, you're the first doctor that I've gone to that actually, when I keep saying this stuff is in my head, not in my head, but on my head, you're the first doctor that's actually said, all right, let me look at what's going on. Everything else is an assumption or that's not part of your diagnosis because it has to do with this. And so again, people are wanting to be heard. And the premise is that a person understands themselves, they may not know or have the language in order to make it come forward, but they have an instinct, they have a feeling, and that is super important. And I listen, my team, we listen to that.
It is kind of funny to think that a doctor or anyone would know your own body better than you would.
Oh, well,
you're in it all day long.
Exactly. but I mean, Katie, if you step back and when I take a look at what's happening and has been happening for many generations, is that we systematically are getting out of our bodies. We're getting out of our bodies. And when we're out of our bodies, then it's just natural to be told what to do and this is how it is. But hopefully people will, kind of wake up, and there are people that are awake that are saying, wait a minute, I probably know my body more than ever. And I know it better than you do. And if you can't listen or appreciate that, then, I need to find someone that's going to help me listen and understand my own body even deeper.
So can you accept virtual clients? So if anybody out there is listening is thinking, God, I'm just looking for somebody who can, understand and I can have a real conversation with. Do you see people around the country in the world?
We do. I do. Yeah. And everything's very HIPAA secure and encrypted and everything. So it's safe. And we've had people from Europe, from the Netherlands to South America. And, I must say that I was a little hesitant at the beginning because I like to, touch and hug. And I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work. And it still works. And the reason being is you bring the heart into the conversation. So just like in going into a sweat lodge, for example, you leave your stuff out of the sweat lodge and you go into that and you're there. And that intention, that energetic vibration is set even in front of a computer screen.
What does that allow or facilitate for the person coming into that space? What is that type of arrangement or sacred space, circle, container? What does that allow the patient or client to experience?
Safety. So when I think about what I'm doing is I'm going to share this. This was a lesson that I learned from a client, and she was referred to me. She had an advanced cancer, and she came to me and I said, all right, let me hear you and I'll see what I can do to help. And so she told me her story and I gave her a list of cancer specialists. And I said, these are people. I'm not a cancer specialist. I don't specialize intentionally. And so I gave her a list and I said, this, I would recommend this person or this person or this person. Here's the contact information. She said, nope, that's not what I want to do. And I said, Mel, do you want, how to? And she said, no. She said, I've decided I want to work with you. And I said, I don't know. I think that you need to go. I'm trying to get her to go. So she refused. And she said, you don't understand. You are what I need. Mm-hmm. And I said, tell me why. She said, I don't need that stuff. I need to be working with someone that is going to hold the container for me so I can go inward in order to come in touch and so I can understand why I've gotten to this point, because it's an inner journey for me and you'll understand that. And oh, wow. And this was just a few years ago. So it wasn't like I was a new kid on the block in medicine. And so she came back and she brought a painting for me because she's an artist. And she said, I've had this painting for many years and it said it needed to be with you. And it's the name of the painting is about about abandonment of journey or something like that. And so she came in for only the second time. And I'm thinking, what? What do I do with this? Here's a person who doesn't want to be referred. She doesn't want to do, I mean, there's no procedure for this one. And so I said, all right, just like what you do, Katie, what do you do best? You get connected with the plants. You get connected with nature, because that is where you resonate. That is what you're so brilliant at. And so I asked myself, what do I know? All this other stuff, what do I know? And I'm like, I know how to pray. And so she laid on the table. I played a certain kind of vibrational music to get the frequency up. And I prayed. And when she came, kind of woke up, if you will, and she said, St. Francis of Assisi was here. And I said, yes. And then she said, Archangel Raphael was here. And I said, yes. Archangel Raphael, the patriot, the physician, right? So that was one of my big lessons, is sometimes I may not know, but if I go inside, I do know. Listen to people. So she taught me a big lesson.
It's like overriding the whole system. It's like completely, like, I don't know, I see this visual of just like taking off all your clothes and like stepping out of this paradigm and into a different paradigm. It's like what you think you might need, and everybody needs something different. Maybe certain folks need the labs and the tests and the chemical information and the, some people may need that. And then other people might just need to like completely remove themselves from that paradigm and be in a different one to really receive the level of healing that they need.
Exactly. I had just conversely with that is one patient or one client, and the last conversation we had is very bright woman I loved. I still love her. Thank you very much. And she said, I finally get what you're doing here, Dr. C. I'm like, what?
Enlighten me.
Help me. And she said something like, working with me must be really challenging and tough for you. And she said, because what I see that you're doing is you're not telling me what to do. You're taking my case and you have been helping me to get in touch with myself so I can make my own choices. And she said, I know that the choices I've been making, you don't like them, but you are not interfering with my process. And she said, that must be very difficult for you when you know that you could do something different, but that's not my choice. And it's true. It's like a well-informed client, a well-informed patient is very important. But at the end of the day, it's your choice of how you want to proceed.
Okay, so what would the world be like if we had more medical professionals like you? I mean, bless everybody's heart who's in the medical industry.
Oh,
everybody's in a different, has a different role. But
yeah, we have a system set up that it would be nice to be more supported as physicians. I mean, and this is where, when I hear people saying, well, my physician doesn't do this or this, I'm like, let's step back out of that. Let's just take a look at the big picture end to end of what goes on in medicine. You're restricted by the amount of time you can have. Your reimbursement rates are set at a certain amount. And then of course, there's a lot of restrictions. And I look forward to the day when it will change and that we can be having more conversations about wellness than about disease.
Management. Yeah, I got a flyer in the mail for some sort of healthcare place that's in the neighborhood that's letting me know that they're here. And one of the bullets was chronic disease management. I thought, Gosh. That's calling it like it is. That's honest. I was going to ask you if you could talk a little bit about plant allies and how they may intersect with your work, or when they come in to help out. When do the plants help you and your patients out? But I feel like there's before you even said mistletoe, I mean, I know it's like there's a giant mistletoe that wants to be channeled through you. So whether or not they're actually in the space or your clients are being prescribed herbs or flower essences or whatever, do you get a sense of these plant allies being helpful in any way?
Absolutely. Let me see if I'm in sync with what you're asking. When I with a client, I'll have just, I'm sure like you with your flower essences, there'll be an inspiration of the flower or the message. It's the same way with me when I'm working with my clients. And that's why I like the toolbox of having plants or homeopathic remedies or various sorts, or a combination of. And that's why I even like to have people walk out to be in nature. The plant allies come in various forms, whether it be, like you said, the flower essences or the tinctures, or just using plant as food. And part of it is to help my clients create a relationship themselves with the plants, and to help them use their instincts and their intuition of the plants, or like plant food or what to eat. Is that what you're going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
What do you use? What do you do? Someone comes in, is it vitamin C IV, or is it maybe you could use milk thistle, or are you using homeopathic remedies, or how do all of these natural substances make their way into your life, into your patient's life, into your sessions?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, everyone is different. So, for example, if I see a person that is taking a lot of supplements, for example, we may not take supplements for a while. And I have to take these supplements. Why don't you want me to take supplements? I'm like, well, you need to take a supplement holiday.
That's great.
Okay. And more importantly, see, this is where people become attached to a supplement as if, it's like you have high cholesterol, you take a Lipitor, which is a prescription drug, or you can take a different herb. Okay. So those are available, but I like to look deeper at what's going on here with a client. Are we just substituting an herb for a prescription? A lot of that happens, yes. We need to look deeper into that person's psyche to see that maybe what they need is to take a walk out in nature. Maybe they don't need that particular herb right now. So it's how can I explain? There's a belief system too that comes into play, Katie, that sometimes if a person believes that a supplement's going to help them, or an herb or a plant's going to help them, then we can start there. But then we can gently wean them away. My idealized version of medicine is that people are eating the right foods, and the foods are grown with the right type of soil, which we often overlook, into soil management and soil health. And people are in an environment that, and this may be utopia, but okay, so what? I don't care. And then they come in to see a physician on a periodic basis, and they may have treatments of different sorts, and then they leave because their bodies are naturally resilient, and because they're so in tune with their own bodies, just like with plants, then they're able to fortify themselves. But I bring in, I have to take into account a person's lifestyle. Some people are okay with doing liquids. Other people want a capsule. Some can't take big capsules. They have to take little. So that's to me where the fun can come about. It's like, all right, how can I work around this person and their judgments or what they need or their lifestyle in order to fortify them? I like to start with basics first, if possible, depending on the case. And the reason why is because I like to help ensure that my client knows that they are powerful. And so even like with biofeedback, just teaching a person how to breathe properly so they can see how they can regulate their own heart rhythm. I'm not doing anything. They're doing it. I'm just giving instructions. And so that's real-time feedback where they can see, and they see the power that they have within their human body themselves. So if I can create that level of understanding from the very beginning of someone, then over time, as we're working together and we do add other things, then it's the fundamental basis of the medicine or of them is of themselves, and it's not the medicine. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so when you say basics, do you mean like what you just described, breathing and their own sense of empowerment with their body, or what do you mean by basics?
Oh, okay. So the basics would be breathing, being aware of their thoughts, anything that's not having to do with a substance that's being ingested.
Oh, love it. I thought you were going to say minerals and vitamins. Okay.
No.
I like these basics.
And if you look at the basics, how many generations, thousands have been around for this. And, we have this big vagus nerve that runs right down the center of the body, and just re-regulating the breath pattern can do amazing things. And to me, again, it is not going external to solve whatever the issue is, but coming back internal.
You realize how different your idea of medicine is. You're like totally flipped. Why do you not specialize?
Good question. I'm glad you asked. So, and I've been asked this question often. And I have a very dear friend who a few weeks ago, she asked me that question. She said, if you would specialize in cognitive behavior, which she said, this could happen. And I said, I don't specialize. I don't want to go there. She said, well, why not? And so I started telling her, just like you asked me, and that is, if I'm specializing, then I am what I would call I'm doing block analysis, meaning that, let's use dementia. If that's my specialty, and this is for me, this is not applying to anyone else that specializes, is that for me, I'm going to be in this block pattern of thinking. And that's not how I think. That's not how I look at the human body. It's not how I look at the world.
What do you mean by block pattern?
It's like with chess. So there's, these incredible, or like with Tiger Woods, just incredible athlete, incredible chess players, because there's this repetition. Okay. And so there's a strategy and it's a repetition. Okay. Mm-hmm. I do differently. I look deeply at structures. I like to visualize that I have on 3D glasses and I'm looking in and around the body. I'm looking at the patterns. I'm looking at the patterns of thinking. I'm looking at the patterns of the way that the nails may be growing on a person. I'm looking at the patterns of the way they talk about themselves or their family or a loved one. There's patterns, just like there are patterns in nature. So I specialize in being curious. I specialize in looking at patterns, but I don't specialize in this other stuff. And when I was talking with my friend, and I said, oh, you're tough on me. And she said, I was wanting to be. And I said, why? She said, because I want you to get this book. And I said, what is it? She said, it's called Range, Range. And she said, when you read that book, you'll understand who you are when I ask you that question. So I got the book. I've been reading it. And it feels good to see that book written.
Why is that? What's the book?
And the book is about just what I said. The book is taking a look out when, taking a look at a Tiger Woods versus, what's the other tennis player from Switzerland? He started off where he's looking at attributes of professional athletes and how they got to where they're at in the world. And it talks about the people that are specialized versus those that don't. And it's not one is good and one is not good. That's not where this comes from at all. It's just a way of thinking, a way of looking at the world, the way of looking at your skill set.
It seems like you are the type of person who would be almost singularly using, it's like a range of tools and methods, but the method is just one. And the method is like, what's really going on? I don't know what's really going on. Well, what's really going on? And what's really going on?
Mm-hmm.
And what's really going on underneath there?
Mm-hmm.
So that we are essentially able to heal ourselves versus need something external to patch it up, fix what's broken, support where we don't feel supported or.
Yes. I want people to become self-empowered. I want people to become curious. If I can create curiosity, then it's a good day. Because when a person is curious, then we're not stuck in the stymied, toxic, whatever that we're in. When we're curious, we're willing to maybe ask a few different questions. If we're curious, maybe we'll ask some deep questions. If we're curious, we might start connecting the dots, not only within ourselves, but within our world around us.
What percentage of, just your personal opinion of an experience based on experience, what percentage of physical imbalances have a root cause in either emotional, mental, or spiritual, energetic bodies?
99.9%. Plus.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The tools are all available, and as I've grown into what I'm doing, which honestly didn't make a lot of sense to me early on, and now it does. And it sounds maybe silly, I just help people, along the way to get reconnected within their own soul.
Okay, doctor. Where can people access you? Where can people find you? How can people make an appointment with you?
They go to the website Sowello, SOWELLO health.com. They'll see some information there, and they can send me a little message, contact me, or they can go to thrive@sowellohealth.com and send an email directly.
And do you have any last words of wisdom, something you often find yourself telling people, something that's come up recently or is timeless, or something that just springs to your heart in this moment?
Don't lose yourself. Remember that you are powerful. Remember that fear creates division within yourself and with others. And remember, you are an incredible individual, and your body is here to help you. And really, maybe even most importantly, remember love. And remember that you, just by your presence, are love and an inspiration to other people. And you never know, just by your presence, the impact that you could have on someone. And be kind.
Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.